On March 14, 1849, the county courthouse in Loon County, Alabama, went up in flames in what authorities described as a tragic mishap from a toppled lamp. Yet amid the ruins, searchers uncovered evidence that clashed with the official account. 3 sets of human remains discovered in the basement, shackled to iron rings set into the stone walls. The county clerk's files from 1847 through 1849 were utterly lost, along with land deeds, marriage records, and, most critically, the probate papers for the Sutton estate. For more than 100 years, Loon County families have passed down hushed tales about what truly occurred at Bell River Plantation in those 2 years, stories involving Colonel Nathaniel Sutton's twin daughters and a slave called Marcus, who somehow recorded it all before disappearing. What follows has been assembled from scattered surviving letters, medical documents from Mobile, and sealed testimonies provided to a northern abolitionist group that remained locked away until 1963. Before diving deeper into the tale of the Sutton sisters and the secrets that engulfed an entire community, be sure you're subscribed to Liturgy of Fear and have that notification bell turned on. We explore the shadowed corners of American history that textbooks avoid, so drop a comment below letting us know what state or city you're watching from. We love hearing where our viewers uncover these lost horrors. The story of Bell River Plantation doesn't start with the fire, but with a death 2 years earlier, and with 2 women who learned that survival demanded total control. In 1847, Loons County covered some of Alabama's richest cotton land, dark soil that built fortunes and shaped the terrain into empires of grand white-columned homes ringed by fields stretching to the horizon. At its heart stood the county seat of Hanville, a cluster of brick structures and dusty roads where planters handled business while their wives acted as if they didn't know the real source of the family money. 8 miles south of town lay Bell River Plantation, reached only by a private lane winding through water oaks and over 2 branches of the Alabama River. Colonel Nathaniel Sutton had erected the main house in 1828, a 3-story building with 12 rooms and a detached kitchen linked by a covered passage. The slave quarters, 24 cabins lined up in 2 neat rows, stood a quarter-mile behind the big house, near enough for quick summoning, distant enough that the colonel never heard the daily sounds of the lives he controlled. He had grown rich from cotton, but his notoriety stemmed from something far different. He had fought in the Creek War under Andrew Jackson and returned with a conviction that people could be refined through selective breeding, just like livestock. His library held Philadelphia medical books, Virginia farming journals, and private letters exchanged with university scholars who shared his views on racial order and inherited destiny. He maintained precise records, measurements, notes, family lines traced back generations. Neighbors saw him as eccentric yet brilliant. His slaves called him something else entirely, though never within white hearing. The colonel never wed. Instead, in 1824 he bought a slave woman named Ruth from a Charleston dealer, described on the bill of sale as unusually fair-skinned with refined manners. Ruth bore twin daughters in 1825, Sarah and Catherine. The colonel raised them inside the main house, hired tutors from Mobile, clothed them in fabrics shipped from New Orleans, yet he never freed them or legally recognized them as his own. On paper, they stayed his property, granting him complete power over every part of their lives. Sarah and Catherine grew up in strange seclusion. They mastered reading, writing, watercolor painting, and pianoforte. They studied literature, mathematics, geography, and French. Yet they seldom left the plantation. The colonel decided who could visit and when, filtering every social contact through his strict standards. He told them they were exceptional, granted privileges far above their status, but that the outside world would never comprehend or accept them. He taught that safety lay in isolation, trust was a flaw, and power, however limited, was the only thing that truly mattered. The twins absorbed these lessons completely. They created their own silent language of looks and gestures, completing each other's thoughts, sometimes going days without speaking and passing notes across the table. They dressed alike in matching styles but different shades, Sarah in deep green, Catherine in midnight blue. They read the same book simultaneously, one beginning at the front, the other at the back, meeting in the center. They shared everything: hairbrushes, jewelry, secrets, and eventually something far darker. Their mother, Ruth, died in 1839, supposedly of pneumonia, though whispers in the quarters spoke of bruises on her arms and terror in her eyes in her last weeks. After her passing, the Colonel's grip on his daughters tightened further. He added locks to their bedroom doors that opened only from outside. He demanded weekly written accounts of their actions, thoughts, and dreams. He began testing them, leaving valuables in plain sight to check for theft, introducing male callers to gauge reactions, staging scenarios meant to expose any rebellion. The plantation thrived during these years. By 1847, the Colonel owned 63 enslaved people whose work yielded 142 bales of cotton each year. He sold through mobile factors and reinvested in more land, more slaves, more volumes for his expanding library. Belle River's slave population showed an odd pattern: a high number of light-skinned individuals, more children than normal birth rate suggested, and frequent family separations with sales timed just as children reached their teens. The overseer, Jonas Pritchett, had served 15 years. He lived in a cottage near the quarters and executed the Colonel's commands with mechanical accuracy. Pritchett kept his own notebooks, punishment records, work schedules, diet limits for those marked for the breeding program. Written in tight script, they listed horrors with the detached tone of crop reports: which women were forced into which cabins, which children were fathered by which men, which pregnancies were ended and how. In the main house, Sarah and Catherine understood far more than their father suspected. They read his journals while he was away in Mobile. They eavesdropped and pieced together fragments of talks between Pritchett and the Colonel. They knew what occurred in the quarters at night. They knew which slaves were their half-siblings. They knew their father saw people as test subjects in his private laboratory of racial science. And they learned to hate him with a quiet, enduring rage that would have frightened him had he seen it. The morning of February 3, 1847, dawned unusually warm, temperatures rising to the low 60s before noon. The Colonel had spent the previous night in his study, working late by lamplight on letters to a professor at the Medical College of South Carolina. Household staff noticed nothing odd when he missed breakfast. He often worked through the night. It was Pritchett who discovered him at 10, slumped in his leather chair with papers strewn across the desk. The Colonel's skin had a gray cast, and when Pritchett touched his hand, it felt cold and stiff. Dr. Amos Grayfield arrived from Hanville 2 hours later and declared Colonel Nathaniel Sutton dead, placing time of death between midnight and dawn. Heart seizure, Dr. Grayfield announced with barely a glance. The man was 56, drove himself to exhaustion. I warned him about his choleric nature and overwork. The heart simply fails. Nothing more. Yet several details didn't fit the neat explanation. The dinner tray delivered at 8 the night before remained largely untouched. A cold coffee cup held a faint, glittering sediment at the bottom. The Colonel's last letter to his Mobile attorney ended mid-sentence: I have made certain arrangements regarding the future of my daughters which must be executed precisely as stipulated for their own protection and for the preservation of my life's work. Should any person attempt to. The pen trailed off as if strength had suddenly vanished. Sarah and Catherine stood together in the hallway outside the study, dressed in identical black morning gowns they had somehow obtained without foreknowledge of his death. Their faces showed no tears, no shock or sorrow. They held hands tightly and observed the scene with matching watchful calm. We should examine him more carefully, suggested Harold Greenidge, a neighboring planter who had come to pay respects. Nathaniel seemed healthy when I saw him last month at the courthouse. This feels sudden. The Colonel worked himself into the grave, Dr. Grayfield snapped, annoyed at the challenge. I've seen it countless times. The body gives out. Now excuse me, I must speak with the daughters about arrangements. But Dr. Grayfield never had that talk. Sarah spoke first, her voice steady and cool as winter rain. "Dr. Grayfield, thank you for coming so promptly. The funeral will occur 3 days from now, with burial in the family plot. Our father's attorney, Mr. Jeremiah Osgood from Mobile, has been sent for and should arrive tomorrow evening. Until the will is read and the estate settled, Catherine and I will handle plantation matters. Pritchett remains overseer under our direct oversight." The men in the room traded uneasy looks. Women did not run plantations, certainly not unmarried women of barely 22. And there was something else they couldn't quite name, a feeling that Sarah and Catherine had been waiting for this exact moment, that every word had been rehearsed. "Now, Miss Sarah," Greenidge began in that condescending tone reserved for women discussing serious affairs, "you cannot possibly expect to." "Our father trained us precisely for this situation," Catherine cut in, her tone mirroring her sister's. "We know crop rotation, market conditions, labor management. We have studied his methods for years. This plantation will maintain its productivity." What the men could not know was that the twins had prepared for months. They had memorized account books, learned every enslaved person's name and skills, identified which Hanville merchants could be swayed and which avoided. They had planned for everything, except the exact terms of their father's will. The funeral occurred on February 6 under threatening gray skies that never broke into rain. 43 neighbors and associates gathered in the parlor where the colonel lay in a walnut casket lined with white satin. Reverend Samuel Yates of Hanville's Presbyterian Church delivered a eulogy praising the colonel's contributions to Alabama agriculture and scientific progress. Not one enslaved person from Bell River attended, though that evening they held their own gathering in the quarters, blending Christian hymns with older songs of deliverance and reckoning. They kept voices low, but the sound drifted across the fields to where Sarah and Catherine sat on the veranda. "They believe they're free now," Sarah said softly. "They'll learn otherwise," Catherine answered. Jeremiah Osgood arrived from Mobile the day after the funeral, a stout 50-year-old with silver hair and the cautious demeanor of a man used to delivering unwelcome news to the powerful. He carried a leather case holding the colonel's will and sealed letters marked for the twins alone. The reading happened in the clean study. Sarah and Catherine sat side by side on a settee, black dresses rustling faintly. Pritchett stood by the door, uninvited yet tolerated. Osgood produced a thick document tied with black ribbon. Colonel Sutton revised his will on December 12, 1846, less than 2 months before his death. The terms are unusual. Standard bequests opened the document, gifts to the church, personal items to acquaintances. Then came the plantation and its people. "To my daughters Sarah and Catherine Sutton, I bequeath the entirety of Bell River Plantation, lands, buildings, livestock, equipment, and human property, to be shared jointly and equally. However, this inheritance is conditional on requirements that must be met within 24 months of my death." Osgood paused, cleared his throat, and read on. "First, both daughters must contract lawful Christian marriages with men of suitable character and position approved by the executors of this estate. Second, both marriages must produce legitimate children within the given period. Third, the daughters must sustain current plantation productivity and prove capable management." Sarah's grip tightened on Catherine's hand until knuckles whitened. "If these conditions are not fulfilled," Osgood continued, voice lowering, "Bell River Plantation and all assets will be sold at public auction, proceeds divided among designated charitable institutions, agricultural colleges, medical societies, groups advancing scientific study of human populations." The colonel's last effort to make his beliefs endure. "There is more," Osgood said, producing another document. "A private letter to you both." Sarah broke the seal. Inside, their father's handwriting filled 3 pages. Catherine leaned close, they read silently together. The letter laid out his reasoning with icy precision. He had observed their unnatural bond, their disinterest in normal feminine pursuits of courtship and marriage. He concluded they would never willingly separate or form proper alliances with men able to continue his work. So he crafted a trap: marry and bear children, or lose everything. The final paragraph chilled them most: I have arranged matters to ensure wise choices. My contacts span the state and beyond. They will watch and report. Remember, you are what I created, and you cannot escape your essential nature, no matter the pretense. The blood in your veins is both privilege and prison. Sarah refolded the letter carefully. When she looked up, her face revealed nothing. We understand the terms. Who are the executors? Myself and Mr. Breenage as co-executor. We approve marriages and verify compliance. 24 months, Catherine said. That takes us to February 1849. Correct. Ladies, your father's provisions are highly irregular. Most lawyers would have advised against. Our father's mind was his own, Sarah cut in. We will comply. Now, if you'll excuse us, plantation business awaits. After Osgood departed, promising a return in 6 months, the twins lingered in the study. They sat in their father's chair, Catherine on the seat, Sarah on the arm, and stared at walls of journals, medical texts, and ledgers masking decades of human experimentation as farming records. We cannot find suitable husbands in 2 years, Catherine said at last. He designed this to fail. Not if we control every factor, Sarah replied. Father taught us that. He believed people could be bred like animals, reproduction directed completely. We'll prove him right, just not as he expected. What are you proposing? Sarah opened the bottom drawer of the desk and withdrew a leather journal marked with a ribbon. Father's breeding records. He logged everything: which pairings produced which traits, which bloodlines he favored. Catherine read over her shoulder. The entries were cold, dehumanizing, treating people like stock. He was a monster, Catherine whispered. He was, Sarah agreed, but thorough. And somewhere in these pages lies our answer. In the weeks that followed, the twins immersed themselves in their father's papers. They uncovered the full extent of his obsession: 20 years of journals, detailed genealogies, measurements, temperament notes. He had treated Bell River as a laboratory, its people as subjects serving his theories of racial hierarchy and human perfectibility. Yet they also found unexpected signs: intelligence, resilience, quiet resistance. Slaves who learned to read despite bans. Women who used herbal knowledge to control fertility, undermining the breeding program. Men who sabotaged tools in ways that looked accidental. Their father noted deficiencies without seeing rebellion. One name recurred in later volumes, always with irritation: Ruth, their mother. Bought expecting compliance, she had resisted subtly, teaching her daughters to read in secret, sharing memories of freedom, sowing doubt about the colonel's authority. She tried to protect us, Catherine said, tracing their mother's name. Then we owe her victory, not just survival, Sarah answered. Victory needed resources, time, and one element they lacked: a man they could fully control, whose presence would satisfy the will's letter while defying its intent. The answer appeared in late April, though not recognized at first. The spring auction in Hanville turned the courthouse square into a marketplace of human suffering. Enslaved people stood on the block while white men inspected them like animals, checking teeth, muscles, asking invasive questions. Sarah and Catherine attended with Pritchett, ostensibly to buy field hands for expanded planting. Still in mourning, they wore black veils that granted anonymity and let them watch without close scrutiny. The morning passed predictably: field workers, domestics, children separated from parents. Then, near noon, something different: next lot, property of the late Granville estate. One male, about 28, named Marcus. Literate, house-trained, tutored the Granville children. No rebellion, no running. Opening bid $1,000. Marcus stood straight, gaze steady, neither defiant nor broken. Clean but worn clothes, hands unmarked by field labor, skin lighter than most sold that day. But what seized Sarah's attention was his expression, calculating, assessing buyers as closely as they assessed him. "Educated slaves are trouble," someone shouted. "Get notions above their place." "Perfect for a household needing accounts kept," the auctioneer countered. "How many of you balance your own books?" Bidding started slow. Most planters avoided educated males as risks. A few merchants showed interest. Sarah whispered to Pritchett. He raised his hand. 1,000. The price climbed to 1,600 before the last rival quit. Sarah paid above market, sparking later gossip. Marcus arrived at Bell River 3 days later, walking from Hanville with his belongings in a sack. Pritchett brought him straight to the study where the twins waited. "You read and write," Sarah stated. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied, voice educated, guarded. "You taught the Granville children, what subjects?" "Reading, writing, arithmetic, geography, history, as their father wished." Catherine circled him slowly. "The Granvilles were Quakers, abolitionists, I understand. They educated their slaves." For the first time, something flickered in Marcus's eyes, weariness, perhaps caution. "Mr. Granville believed every soul deserved a mind developed, ma'am." "And you?" Sarah pressed. "What do you believe?" "I believe I'm facing 2 women who overpaid for me and clearly want more than field work." The twins exchanged looks. Their father had trained them to see enslaved people as objects incapable of insight. Marcus had just shown both. "We face an unusual inheritance," Sarah said carefully. "Our father's death left conditions requiring creative handling. We need someone literate, discreet, able to grasp complex arrangements." "What sort of arrangements?" "The kind that stay private in this house," Catherine answered. "You'll live in the main house, use father's library, be treated well, fed properly, given freedoms unheard of elsewhere. In return, you obey instantly and without question." Marcus was quiet a long while. "And if I refuse these unnamed terms?" "You'll be sold south," Sarah said flatly. "Mississippi cotton fields break educated slaves quickly. I can have you on a boat in a week." The threat was real, Marcus knew it. "What exactly do you want?" "That depends," Catherine said. "Can you keep secrets, even dangerous ones?" "I've kept secrets my whole life to survive." Sarah turned to the window, gazing over the grounds. "Fathers will demand we marry within 2 years or lose everything. We will not submit to marriages chosen by men who see us as property. We will meet the terms technically while subverting them." "I don't follow." "You will," Catherine said. "But first, can we trust you absolutely?" Over the next days, they tested him subtly and openly. They let him browse the library and noted his choices. They probed his views on politics, watched for abolitionist hints. They observed his interactions in the quarters for signs of agitation. Marcus proved adaptable, reserved, careful, intelligent from years navigating peril. He knew educated slaves were valuable yet feared. What the twins did not yet know was that Marcus carried his own secrets and purpose. The Granvilles had been Quaker abolitionists, part of a network gathering slave testimonies. For 5 years Marcus had recorded atrocities in coded shorthand. When the Granvilles died of fever, relatives sold the estate, including him, before discovering his hidden trunk of evidence. He had rescued his key notebooks, concealing them in a hollowed Bible. Bought for Bell River, he expected more careful documentation. Instead he entered something stranger and riskier. By mid-May the arrangement clarified. Marcus became their private secretary, handling accounts, letters. More crucially, their confidant in a plan still unfolding. Sarah revealed it one June evening after the house staff retired. Alone in the study, she began, "Fathers will require marriage and children within 2 years. Executors must approve husbands, men of suitable character and standing. The will says nothing about suitability for us, only external standards." "I'm still not following," Marcus said. Catherine's smile held something fierce. "We will marry men we can dominate completely, elderly, infirm, or desperate for wealth and status. They provide legal cover without interference." "And the children?" Marcus asked, beginning to grasp. "Biology is straightforward," Sarah said bluntly. "Fathers spent decades proving lineage can be managed. Executors need marriages and pregnancies. They need not know what occurs privately." The full meaning struck Marcus hard. They meant for him to father the heirs, creating the appearance of legitimacy while keeping control through sham marriages. "You ask me to risk death for all of us," he said slowly. "Discovery would mean—" "No one will discover," Catherine cut in. "We control this house utterly. Marriages will be arranged meticulously, every witness, every detail managed. You will be safe." "Safe?" Marcus gave a bitter laugh. "I'm a slave. There is no safety. If this fails, you face social ruin. I face fire or hanging." "Which is why you'll ensure success," Sarah replied. "In exchange, you gain something worth the danger." "What could be worth that?" "Freedom," Catherine said quietly. "Legal manumission and funds to go north after the children are born and the estate secured." Marcus searched their faces for deceit. "And if I refuse?" "You won't," Sarah said with certainty. "You want freedom more than you fear death, and you're intelligent enough to see this is your only chance." She was right. Yet Marcus saw more, a chance not just for personal escape but to expose the entire system. Evidence of the Colonel's experiments, the network of collaborating planters, decades of crimes. If sent north, it could wound slavery itself. "I'll do it," he said at last, "on one condition. You're in no position. I am, if you want willing cooperation, not resentment. I want full access to everything, journals, letters, breeding logs. If I risk my life, I deserve the complete picture." The twins weighed the danger against the risk of sullen obedience. "Agreed," Sarah said. "But you study here, under supervision. Nothing leaves." None admitted aloud that each had just struck a bargain with someone they did not fully trust, betting everything on a deception that required perfect alignment. And in Loon County, Alabama, in 1847, perfection was scarce .11.1s fast.